Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter here, and today I am painting Helm Hammerhand from the new War of the Rohirrim edition to the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. I spray painted him with a black primer and then went over it with a gray one to create a zenithal highlight, so a top-down spray, so leaving the areas below darker. And it helps in the further process because there's a lot of flesh on this guy. To start off with, I'm using Bugman's Glow as a base tone for his skin. Make sure to thin it down just a little bit so you can see those shaded areas that we left before with the primer. Next we're going over it with some Cadian Flesh Tone. And the Cadian Flesh Tone I used in several ways. First I outlined the parts that I want to highlight, and then I water down my paint just a little bit, make a wash out of it and go over it, as you can see here. What you're trying to do here is to pull the paint towards the brighter parts. So you add it and you pull it towards where you want it to be. And this way you create a nice gradient in your layers. I'm doing the same with Kislev Flesh as a third highlight. So again, paint out the areas you want to be highlighted. Make sure they're smaller than the previous layer, of course, to get those nice gradients. And then water it down just a little bit and create a wash and pull it towards the bright areas. Next, Grey Seer. The hair is mostly grey the way I sprayed it, but you want it to be completely covered with this nice grey tone. Also the eyebrows at this point, because you may have touched them with your skin tone. The mustache, the beard, make sure that everything gets a nice coat. And we're going to shade it later on. And with the same color, also the Grey Seer, I touched all the furry parts sticking out of his chest piece, because we're doing it with the same color. Once dried, I'm using Apothecary White to shade the beard and those cloth, the woolen parts below. If you don't have any in Apothecary White, step 1, buy it because it's an amazing paint, and step 2, you can change it maybe with some thinned down Nulnar if you want. Next, Palette Witch Flesh to paint in the teeth of the model. I also used it to paint in the eyes, which I didn't film with this model, but you can see in any of my other videos how I try and approach those. For the left arm, I'm using Rockart Flesh to paint the bandages, the wrist wraps, we call them, around the arm. And the padding on his chest and back, I painted with Administratum Grey, just to have it a little bit darker than the fur sticking out on the sides. Administratum Grey is a nice yellowy grey. Then I'm using Dawnstone on the pants. They're just a little bit showing here on his knee and a slight part on the left leg. You don't have to pay too much attention to it, it's just a little bit. And we're back to the Apothecary White. Once again, if you don't have it, mix it with some Nuln Oil if you want. Thin it down just a little bit and get in those creases of the padding. Then it's White Scar to paint in those diamond-shaped pads on his chest and back, and give the edges a little white line. And this way you create some depth and make them look puffy. So the middle is darker than the sides. Make a fine, very, very fine line to do this. I'm also using white scar with a dry brush to paint the tips of the fur part below the skirt and on top of his shoulders, sticking out of his chest piece. Just the very tips, and here on the shoulders as well. You can do it with a regular brush if you want. Dry brush works very nice. Then it's dried bark and Abaddon black for his right arm wrist pad. Nice and dark base coat. I'm highlighting this with some Baneblade brown. Just the edges, and as a second highlight I used pure Baneblade brown on the rims of the model and painted in a little pattern, as you can see here, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And I used rock art flesh on the bands of his wrist pad. Next I painted everything with some Seraphim sepia to give it a nice leathery look. Then it's on to Agrak's Earthshade to the left hand. The wristbands here, I darkened them down, created some nice details on that. Don't take too much paint because you don't want to make it too dark, but just see those creases. Then it's on to the skirt. Is it a skirt? Caliban green is what I used as a base tone. Then some Ogrim Camo, which is a nice yellow-green as a highlight. Gives him a beautiful look. Just touch those very edges. You can take it even further if you want by brightening this, but I only stuck to the edges, so there's not really a lot of room to do any more. So, yeah. Some dried bark and Abaddon black it is for the boots. And as I did before, I highlighted by adding some Baneblade brown in increased amounts. I wanted to leave them a little bit dark, but you can take it further by adding pure Baneblade brown if you want. Then some rock art flesh for the bands around the legs. Then for the strap around his waist is Doomble brown with a mix of Rhinox hide to darken it a little bit down, because Doomble brown is quite red and I like it, but I don't want it to be too red. So a mixture of those two is perfect. Once dried, you can apply some Bugman's Glow as a highlight on the very edges of this strap and also the strap around his waist. Then it's pure dried bark for the horn, which is a nice detail on this model. Helm Hammerhand's famous for his horn, of course. They use dried bark for the inner parts. And then painted some lines on it by using rock art flesh. If you want, you can do a wash to blend those colors a little bit more together. For the gold parts, I used Retributor armor, which is the big top part. There's a piece in the middle, and there's the mouthpiece on the end. I'm then highlighting this with Canoptek alloy. I left the middle a little bit golden, and stuck to the edges and the details, the ornamental signs on the top of this horn. After doing this, I washed it with some Helm oil to darken it down. You get those nice shades and the tiny details on the horn. But because you're also darkening down the Canoptek alloy, I'm retouching it on the parts that are glowing and catching the most light. And I'm also doing the buckle on the bottom of the belt over here. Touch those very top edges of the horn. Give it a nice glow. And that's it for this model. There's only a base left, some mechanical standard gray for the rocks. I added some extra rocks to the bottom. You can do it however you see fit, of course. The rocks I highlighted with some Administratum gray, washed them with some Helm oil, and you can go over it if you want with some brighter gray, like gray cedar or something, if you want some extra sharp details. The rest of the base you can do however you see fit, use some brown tones, add some static grass or whatever, and you're done. But there's one final detail that I decided to add to this model, because the box art shows he has this red knuckles, and for that I used corn red. I probably beat somebody bloody, or yeah, look at how mean he looks. Beautiful finished model for the new War of the Rohirrim game. Thank you so much for watching again, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you do, please consider subscribing to my channel. It means a lot to me. And I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!